rainy day Monday. Hey, good morning on you guys. Make sure you save all the good chocolate for Uncle Chris. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Jay, ask a question.
Okay, this is for all four of you.
Why just one, though? You can ask a few.
Okay, Mary Rhodes is here, too. So, Mary, please feel free to jump in. Where do you guys stand? This is a very serious question, right? Where do you guys stand on coconut in your chocolate?
Do it. Let's go.
I can't stand this stuff. Like mounds and
Almond Joy?
Mounds and Almond Joy? No way. Please,
Bree's,
take mine.
Bree's absolutely right on this. Almond Joy.
I mean, I love coconut. I'm all about like coconut candy and,
Yeah.
like coconut, coconut in all other forms. But with chocolate, no way, man.
Is this your friend, Bree? That's your friend over here? You brought this guy?
Yep.
Yeah, wow. Wow.
Mary, please tell me I'm not the only one that feels this way.
I actually do like Almond Joy, but the funny thing is I don't like chocolate.
Okay. There you go.
It has to have coconut for me to like it, or caramel.
Or okay.
Yeah, but I don't like chocolate because I don't like milk, and I don't like chocolate in general.
What about the dark chocolate, Mary?
No, not even that.
Okay, so all the candy that the kids never came to my house and picked up, I've got a whole bunch of like Mounds and Almond Joy for you guys tomorrow. Knock yourselves out.
There you go. Bring it to them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
We ask the hard questions here on the show.
Right on.
Yeah.
Wow, Mary, I don't know, though. It says a lot about someone's character when they don't like chocolate. We have to re-examine this relationship.
I know, and I don't even like coffee, remember? So
I know.
I like the smell of coffee, but I don't drink coffee at all.
Well, good morning. You do pretty good in the morning without the caffeine, I'm going to say.
Oh, no. I'm a night owl.
Mary,
Always have been.
she's the president of the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, and you guys have a big hearing this morning, 9 o'clock, and this is for the...
Bill 214. This is Senator Amanda Shelton's bill, the LEAP bill. This is for $25 million to match the governor's $25 million LEAP executive order.
Right, and it's a local employers assistance program?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
It's a local employers assistance program, and today is the public hearing at 9 a.m. And it's really important that we identify the fact that the way the EO was written and the way the funding will be available through the Guam Economic Development Authority is today's session for the 25 million is actually really important in order for us to get the full 50 million. And so if we followed the governor's order and it only was at the 25, it's just really not going to be enough. And so we really need the support of the 36th Guam legislature to pass the additional 25 local appropriation funding in order to fully fund the $50 million for GHRA to administer.
I noticed that there's another bill actually, and this one was by Senator Frank Bloss Jr., and it's $37.5 million for Bill 216, but there hasn't been a public hearing scheduled for that one.
No, not yet. That one was recently just introduced, and so a lot of coordination has taken place regarding 214-36. We actually had a roundtable discussion with senators, several of the senators, led by Senator San Augustine, who was standing in for Senator Shelton. So we've already had the roundtable discussion regarding TARP. And so that took place a couple weeks ago. And then the governor came out with the EO, and we've had stakeholder meetings with GHRA as well. And so the next step is to get this fully funded through local appropriations.
How hard have you guys been working the senators and the legislature for this? Does it have support?
Yeah, I think that several senators had questions, especially when it was under the initial plan. But I think now that of course, the governor has come out and shown support and written it in an executive order, I think the Democrat majority legislature will certainly, I would think that we have a lot more support than we did earlier. And especially with GHRA leading this and already pretty much adopting the fact that they're going to administer this program. And they've gone to great lengths to take what they've done previously in all the series grants to really design it similar to how the other SBA or GHRA programs have been. So a lot of attention to detail has taken place. And so I think that between the legislature and the governor's office that they're a lot more comfortable with that, because it's not just like we're pushing just for funding. The program has pretty much been designed. And so today's public hearing, we're hoping that, again, they're fully supportive, but we don't make too many changes, because if GHRA were to administer it, adding more rules and regulations or changes to the eligibility or things like that, would only further delay this. And so we were really hoping for session to take place and then it to go through committee so that we could see this funding roll out in time for December. So businesses are a little bit more strengthened for the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm. So TARP, you said you guys had a roundtable on TARP?
Yes, we actually had a roundtable on TARP because there was a resolution first introduced by Senator Frank Blas. And so because tourism falls under Senator Amanda Shelton, she felt it was appropriate to hold a roundtable discussion. And so we had that informative session a couple weeks ago. And so it was actually, I think I spoke to you guys on Friday right before it, and it was good. It was probably one of many that we really should have had. And honestly, this has moved rather quickly. I think to a lot of people's surprises, but I think it's just really important again to note the fact that the tourism industry, has continued to be marred by many things, right? With the continued restrictions, the extensions of public health emergencies, but more importantly, with the lack of tourists and with changes in vaccination status with what businesses can do, not just on this island, on our island, Guam, but also internationally, especially with the recent changes with the Biden administration on all international travelers. Mm-hmm. So there's really just been a lot of activity in the last month or two that has addressed additional stressors into the market for the tourism industry. And so we're hoping that, again, this will only help guide them and get them into 2022 so that these businesses can still be around and be able to fully operate when we start to accept tourists.
So are we setting aside TARP for LEAP, the LEAP bill?
Yeah, it's now called the Local Employers Assistance Act. And coupled with this $25 million is local appropriations, the $25 million from the executive order, which, by the way, the EO mentions both, right? Mm-hmm. So it does hinge on the fact that the legislature passed an additional 25. So for total $50, GHRA would administer this grant program, which, by the way, is not just a grant. It's only grant. It's a forgivable loan. So similar to what you've seen with PPP, it's a forgivable loan, understanding that certain percentages, would be used for business expenditures, such as majority being labor, rent, other things, debt. So it is meant to be an employer assistance program. It's not a straight out grant. It is actually a loan program, which GHRA does anyway, even outside the pandemic. And so it would be really great to have, the director, Mel, and deputy director, Joanne, on the show, because they could go into more detail once this goes up live. And I know that they just announced another program that went live this morning, November 1, on their GHRA website. LEAP is not out there because we still need to appropriate the funding first. So as soon as that is out there, I know Mel and Joanne, they've had stakeholder meetings with a lot of different stakeholder groups. They had 2 last week, and I believe that they're gonna have more this week. So there's a lot of effort to make sure that everybody has, their voice and opinions put into this. But the design of it has essentially been put together in the last couple weeks.
Has anybody questioned why we need to use $25 million in local funds when the governor has all this ARP money? Want to fund the whole thing?
Initially, we asked for $75 million, and we weren't particular where it should come from as long as it's fully funded. Ideally, if we were to take, the money from the rescue plan, but there are a lot of other programs that are being being funded by the rescue plan. And so really they felt it was a good way to have a little bit of skin in the game with regards to local appropriation, because they could plan for that. And, you know, a lot of the tax base, right, relies on these businesses as well. And so knowing that tax, hotel, all of those things come from taxes, all of the revenues. So it was a way to get it funded at least up to 50 million with both federal and local dollars.
Yeah, Mary, I got a question because I remember the last time you were on, Jay Merrill was here as well, and I remember when speaking to him, I said, you know, can you speak to the effectiveness of this program back then? And he said, well, you know, it's a good start. And do you anticipate that sentiment kind of like really being emphasized today at the public hearing to kind of drive home the point and kind of like, you know, really prove that, you know, this thing is not, you know, a complete, you know, stopgap solution, but, you know.
Yeah, it's not a stopgap.
Yeah.
It's definitely more of a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And there are details within the program where, you know, they have to use the funding by a certain time. It's meant for certain types of expenses, as I said earlier. But it's also, you have to operate within a certain period, rehire. So it is really intended, again, as an employer's assistance program so that businesses can rehire. That's part of the formula. If you don't do those things within a certain time, then you have to pay the money back, similar to PPP. And so it's not a full grant unless the monies you've exhausted through the program that you were awarded have been used for appropriate uses, right? Usage. So, so it serves as a bridge loan, really, or as a loan, the award itself, and then it's a forgivable loan later on.
Right.
So it's not just a handout to the businesses. It truly serves as an initial loan, and then it's forgivable if you do certain things.
Could qualified applicants combine this with the previous, like that restaurant revitalization fund, you know, which was very, very helpful, and I believe you were telling us when it came on that wasn't a schedule of disbursements. It was like one-time payment to cover all the expenses you had accrued to this point. But can they use the restaurant revitalization fund with this new LEAP program, or does it, you know, do
this
they kind
actually, GHRA has taken into account all previous funded programs or awards, and so it deducts all of those things because it's based on your gross revenue less any assistance, right? But with regards to RRF, Restaurant Revitalization Fund, or even the shuttered venue grants through SBA, those applicants will have to wait until the monies are exhausted. Those who have received, I'm sorry, not applicants, because, for example, there were over 270 restaurant applicants from Guam, but only 79 were awarded. So the 79 will have to wait to the end because they were made whole by RRF. And so whether or not they apply is one thing. Second, if they were to get considered to be awarded, they'd have to wait to the end of the line until everybody else gets awarded who wasn't made whole by SBA.
Do you have any numbers in terms of how many businesses were affected that lost employees, that were shut down, that would be eligible for this program?
Yeah, GHRA actually has the numbers, and they were able to, that's how they were able to justify the amounts rather than the full 75, because they already have the information from the previous applicants from their other grant programs. And so they know exactly kind of the threshold of how many people would qualify with, let's say, 5 employees or more, right, where they've had to scale down. And so they did look at group size, and this is intended to really benefit small and large groups, but they're still deciding what the final details of that. And so I don't want to say too much because it's not finalized until this bill passes, because the money has to be there, and then GHRA still has to really appropriate the rules and regs on this program. And so there are a lot of, again, thought and consideration has been made for small business as well as large. And then possible tiers that maybe some are reserved, you know, specifically for a group size of this amount as well as a larger amount. And it's, again, not just for, you know, it's for everybody in the tourism industry. And you have to keep in mind, you know, it's not just restaurants, optional tours, transportation companies, retail. There are a lot of ancillary services too. So although this intent is specifically for tourism related businesses, there are so many businesses who rely on tourism as part of their business model. And so you brought up restaurants. So for example, there are a lot of restaurants who are still not open yet, especially down in Chuman, because majority of their clientele comes from tourists. Even though we've had, military activity and Airbnb in the past and some tourists coming in from Korea, they're still not open because it won't justify operating at that level. They need a larger volume. And so those businesses would be eligible. And so there are requirements in the program for eligibility. And it does take into consideration programs already funded.
If a business applied for and was granted a grant from GHRA, I think the program that they've got going on right now, could they still apply for this LEAP program?
Yes.
They can. Okay.
In fact, they're encouraged. They already know who, because in the past, right, the awards have been smaller amounts. This last recent one was up to 50,000. So if, let's say, for example, your total loss is, in the upwards of $300,000 for the year, and you've only been awarded a couple, you still have room in there to make up the difference. And they would take all of that into consideration as part of that calculation, especially if you're planning to rehire already and you used up PPP. So, and GHRA has also all the BPT reports, right, from Rev and Tax. I was talking to Rev and Tax and GHRA over the last week on just getting access to these reports that are reported to the legislature on a monthly basis. So that way we can kind of track by sector, by industry, where the gross revenues have been trailing off in the recent months and quarters.
Mm-hmm. So how have the businesses under GHRA been doing in this surge, and since the governor implemented her restrictions?
I did a special segment in Zoom with Nestor, and I've also was interviewed by Jason previously with the data that we've collected on our economic survey. And so since Executive Order 2021-19, we've seen businesses drop between 60 to 85% for a lot of these restaurants, especially in hotels and restaurants. So although retail, they're open, I'm sure that it has impacted their businesses as well. But we have it broken down by industry. I can share that with you guys. We're actually putting together some graphics and informational flyers that better summarize it. And so we're planning to get that out this week. So I'll share that with you when we get it, when we finalize it.
Yeah. Mary, very often in public hearings, it's not necessarily the testimony that's presented, although that carries a lot of weight, but also who shows up and, and in volume and everything like that. Do you have any idea, are there who might be considered heavy hitters has committed to showing up and, kind of lending their voice to this argument?
I think a lot of the same people who've been behind TARP will definitely be there. They've been able to get not just business owners, but employees of the industry to speak up on how important this is. Even the, small business entrepreneur who's a 1-2 person shop, where they've, like Mr. Sunil again, right? So they've been able to get a lot of really good people who come out and really give their take and their point of view on this from a small business perspective. What GHRA has done is shared the information, but also encouraged everybody. A lot of people aren't too comfortable with providing oral testimony. So we've invited people to submit written testimony at least. And I know that a lot of our hotels and restaurants are certainly planning to submit written testimony. Some of them will be present, but they've been encouraged to send it directly to Senator St. Augustine and Senator Shelton. So if you cannot provide oral testimony today at 9 a.m., we encourage you to provide written testimony.
Yeah, I think if Mr. Uggan, I'm sure, Bree and Chris will probably agree, if Mr. Uggan makes that kind of anecdote that he did when he came on our show and said, and he goes, I'm not knocking anybody else's operations, but at Valley of the Latte, anybody can turn off an ice cream machine, but at our operation, I still got to feed the pigs. I got to walk the horses and everything like that. It's not that easy.
Right.
And it's that nuance that kind of makes it like a challenging argument.
Right. That's true of a lot of the types of businesses we rely on, right? There are huge expenses associated with that to maintain operations. And so to even reopen requires a lot more than that. And that is the intent of really LEAP, again, is eventually to reopen and hire. If you're already open, we want you to continue hiring at some point. And so it is really highly encouraged. It's designed for that. And so it's to help reignite the economy, help really provide a safety net for a lot of these businesses in the tourism industry that have to rely on lower revenues, lower revenue streams, because we don't have tourists yet. And so they have to be able to sustain themselves in the next 3 to 6 months to a year until tourism is really back to where, even 2 years, right? So I think that's what Jay really meant by it's really just the beginning. We don't know how long this is going to last. And I know we were here exactly the same time frame last year where numbers got really high after the second surge, I believe. And then they started to come down right around the holidays, and then they peaked again. So always after summer, numbers peak, and then they start to subside. And then with the holidays and gatherings and things like that. And, it's an island community, right? And with families, large families. And so I think that we're just kind of going through that natural cycle. But the fact that we're starting to, CDC is here now to better understand our numbers, and we have our vaccinations really continuing to increase again. I just think that at some point we're going to see some changes, and I really hope to see that because, between kids in school as well as businesses and people need to get back to work. I thought that was interesting. I passed by the bell tower on Saturday and I saw the lines for people lining up. And I know several people, private businesses who've held job fairs. And the job fairs they've held since September, since school ended, have been better attended since the summer job fairs that they held. And so I know that people are going to need to start looking for work because we know the federal dollars have really ended. So more programs like these that are federally funded that can help recirculate back into the economy and also equate rehiring is really what Guam needs.
I just had a thought, Mary, because we've been talking about like the context has been, like incumbent companies and, like existing enterprises. But how about for like new ventures? And there might be some entrepreneurs out there that says, hey, like I realize that there is a need for certain services. Like I want to make masks, in mass, or I want to produce my own PPE, or there are things that I feel like I can provide a product or service that would be beneficial to the island. Would they be able to qualify for LEAP as like a form of startup capital almost?
No, LEAP, you had to have been impacted by the pandemic,
Okay.
and you had to have been in business, at least in 2019 and have lost revenue. There are programs within GHRA, though, as well as banking, right, and SBA for new businesses. There are programs that the Small Business Development Center, SBDC at UOG, can help you with if you are thinking about getting into a brand new type of business or start a small business.
Gotcha. Traditional
or
startup
micro
capital,
business.
basically, right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, or even with very little capital, SBDC can certainly provide those resources to you. They have consultants, and it's all federally funded. So if you need that assistance, reach out to the SBDC office, or any of the banks are associated with them as well, and SBA. So SBA and SBDC, that's exactly what they do, is they help small businesses get started.
Awesome.
Right.
I wanted
And
to ask about the.
okay.
Hey, Mary.
Hi,
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay.
Right
Happy
on.
Chris is just placing his order
Halloween.
for my almond joy.
Early All Souls Day, guys.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully this rain will go away. I know we can't have anything with regards to gatherings for All Souls Day, but I'm sure people will be, visiting their relatives and visiting the grave sites. And so hopefully we'll have better weather tomorrow.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But it's All Souls Day in Saipan. I don't know why we don't have the same.
Oh. I wanted to ask about the Afghan commandos. I know you've seen the stories. Just, I guess, your response to it. Are you guys hearing anything, involved with anything? Go
Yeah,
for it.
actually, I was not informed of the visit. Of course, we represent private sector. And so it's interesting that the conversations are still taking place and there is still that effort. And I understand that maybe the areas that they've already secured have been maxed out or starting to get maxed out. What I do have to say, from what I understand with regards to military and our relationships with the military and our recent meeting with the admiral, is that there hasn't been any real strong consideration for Guam as of yet, just because of our sheer size. And uh, every facility or location they have chosen have been inside the fence. So they have selected military bases or secured areas that, because it's not just security for the people, but also, the community around where they live. But there's a lot of services they have to provide, I'm sure, like medical and other things that they need to provide assistance for these families or refugees and their families. So there's a lot that has to come there. And I know that the recent article that you guys covered mentioned a lot of ancillary support. And so that's where we've had the discussion that we understand that if they were to bring them to Guam, we would more than likely provide the lodging for ancillary support, which is no different from any type of mission that comes to Guam or around Guam. There is an exercise coming up in November, and so that's related to Cope North again. And so we have awareness on that in the next month, or this month, sorry, we're already in November. And so that's taking place this month. And so if there are additional military activities related to the Afghan refugees, I'm not fully aware of that just yet. And so I'm sure if it starts to become a little bit more formal, that they will start to communicate with us, because we have a really good relationship with JRM and with the lodging services. And that's the relationship GHRA really hones in on with regards to the military, of course, is providing lodging services and also ensuring security out into the community and working with the Guam Police Department with short patrol, right, types of services. And we work with the Guam USO and the Guam Police Department on that. So that's where GHRA would engage in, is really more from the lodging services, morale, welfare, and security aspects. But I haven't had any official notices or even invites to meetings. So at this point, it's just, speculation, or at least a conversation at a different level than we've had before, which is very interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So I know that the governor has said in the past that they are ready to stand up and assist in whatever capacity there would be, right? So if that's even having Guam as kind of a phased out approach, or even a temporary placement, or even for the relief teams to come here and stay while they switch out with other locations, who knows? It could be a multitude of things, not necessarily just bringing in refugees. It could be, a TDY where they switch out teams in between different locations, where they rotate them out. And so we certainly have a lot of capacity in the hotels at this point, since tourism isn't fully back on. And we've been providing a great service to the military in the last year and a half, especially with a lot of increased activity in the region.
It is definitely different than what you're normally used to hearing, right? It's because we've got this guy, Glenn Pangilinan from Task Force Pineapple here, and I know he's doing his meetings on the ground. But traditionally, Mary, would you have heard about this from maybe like local military partners first?
No, actually, that information comes from higher up, right? So even when we got notification of the Roosevelt, it was like several days before, like 3 days prior to their arrival. Although they had to stay in port and at the gym, it was still a week out before they came to us. But we at least were notified, a couple of days prior to. So I did put some feelers out to see if that movement will be taking place. But right now, just even coordinating anything in November, we have an exercise going on, and we already have, rooms reserved for a lot of military personnel around the region. Now, I don't know if they're related to each other, But certainly we're having increased military activity in November again.
All right, thanks a lot, Mary, and good luck at that 9 a.m. hearing. And Jason has another
Okay,
question.
just real quick, Mary. Since you are the head of GHRA, I was at Payless yesterday. Just doing some grocery shopping early in the morning, and one of the clerks actually told me, and he goes, "Hey, man, did you hear on Saturday night, because like the day before Halloween, they said there was a lot of activity in Tucson, but he said like it wasn't scary, it wasn't dangerous or anything like that. Everybody was socially distant apart, and it was very, very safe. But have you heard at this point, only a mere 48 hours since and everything like that, did the Halloween festivities, let's call it, did it give like a little bit of a boost for activity down there?"
I didn't go out into down in that area like to actually participate in late
Oh,
night
you didn't join a
activities to
costume
find out
contest, Mary?
personally, but I heard it was rather busy, and actually played a golf tournament on Saturday for the women's chamber. So but I did hear it was really quite busy. But busy could be relative, right? For a bar, a busy night for them on Halloween might be their average Wednesday night on a usual basis, right? Or a Thursday night. So I don't know. We don't look at gross receipts taxes. We actually have the hotels who report that to us, but we don't do it from all business sectors.
Okay.
So that's why I actually reached out to Director Daphne and to Director Mel Mendiola, Daphne Shimizu and Director Mel Mendiola, because I think it would be interesting to start looking at kind of the trending with other things and how they correlate to each other.
Absolutely.
On the gross revenues, right? Of how well are we really doing or what is impacted at a certain time when we do certain things. Because I want to apply it to our economic survey and make sure, are we on target when our members are telling us this? Because it could be very subjective, right? So it's all relative to each other on how big or small your scale is. And so that's why I did get a note that the information is actually reported to the legislature on a monthly basis. And so it would be too early to tell the results of definitely Halloween.
Sure.
But the information is prepared by BBMR on a monthly basis, and you can find it at bbmr.guam.gov, and that's where consolidated revenue and expenditure reports are. So I'm going to be looking at it just to kind of analyze how the industry and all of the ancillary services around the industry, the service industry performs during this period, because I really want to compare it on, compared to our survey.
Sure. And hopefully we got somewhat of a bump this past weekend, just because people were doing what they had to do and be safe and everything. But apparently there were a lot of people in costume walking around the strip.
Again, I wasn't down there. So hopefully everybody is still feeling comfortable enough to go out and support. I know that the numbers are at least improving, like doing better than where we were several months ago. But no matter what the numbers are, we should, I just heard your campaign, and Bree said it correctly. Like, I know we're tired of this, we're tired of talking about it, but we still have to do all the basics, right? We have to, no matter what we do, whether it's Halloween, Thanksgiving, or birthday weekend, we have to practice, washing our hands, wear our masks, social distance. And regardless of what it is you're doing, you could be at your grandmother's house, still wash your hands regularly. So that's where I was on Sunday. And so I think that as long as we continue to maintain that or do that, and we don't become complacent, then we're going to prevent another surge from happening, which nobody wants. And so hopefully we're out of this, fourth surge, I think. And so hopefully we're moving towards the right direction, and events like Halloween doesn't further impede us. And so I just hope that everybody's continuing to, be safe out there.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks,
Anything else,
Mary.
Jay? You good? Okay. Appreciate it, Mary. Good luck today.
Thanks, guys.
Break a leg.
Right.
Right on.
Happy
Bye.
hunting.
Thank you.
Not literally, of course. 7:48. Let's take a quick break and come back with more of the link next. Good morning.
This year, Giving Tuesday falls on November 30th.
And though our community is still facing